Hello, welcome. My name is Karen. We're going to be going through a series of workshops that talk about just understanding how money works and just some money management in general. As you know, a lot of people have gone through some difficult times. Stress is over the top sometimes, especially in the area of finances. So I pray that as you listen to this information, you will be able to take away something, and may God give you the wisdom and understanding to make some differences in your life. So stay tuned as the workshop starts. Thank you so much. Hi, everybody. This is Karen Gorenser. I'm just recording my podcast. I start off in the chair first. I'm going to talk about my story and, just rising from the ashes. I have a crowd of people here to support me in this process, so I'm not just staring at a camera. So thanks for being here, you guys. I really appreciate it. So here it was, another run. It's my birthday. I'm in this office I can't afford. And my loyal assistant had baked me a cake. Some of you know who that person is. To wish me happy birthday. And as I was sitting there cutting the cake, I felt this overwhelming sense of fear and loss. And I ran to the bathroom. And I couldn't stop crying. And she came in and asked me what was wrong. And I just said, get Paul to drive me home. And he drove me home, and I crawled into bed, and I couldn't get out for 3 days. I cried and I cried and I cried. I think I was crying for my life. Now, when I look back, I had like a nervous breakdown, I guess is what you would call it. And I just couldn't get out of bed. He would come and he would lay behind me and hug me and ask me what I would need, if I want some tea, some food. I would still just cry. Anyway, when you cry so much, you got nothing left. I think I was dehydrated from crying and the fact that I didn't really eat or drink anything. And at that last sort of moment, I cried out to God. I was at my rock bottom. And I heard his voice audibly. He told me to get up. That's what I heard. Get up. I tried to ignore it, but it happened again. So I got up and I went into the living room. Paul brought me some tea. I couldn't speak. I just sat there, shocked about what was happening, and that I was losing this office and all the money I'd invested. And I had this small team, a handful of people that were loyal, that stuck with me. And I had nothing to give them. I was so empty. And I'm just sitting there thinking, what am I going to do? My life is a mess. I'm going to lose everything. I'm going to lose my home. I'm going to lose everything. And then I hear this audible voice in my head again. And he tells me to call a business colleague. And I must have made a face because Paul looked at me. And he said, what happened? I'm like, nothing. And I'm drinking my tea. And then I hear this same message telling me to call RM. I'm not going to mention any names. And so then I did make a face, and Paul's like, what is going on? And so I said, okay. So I told him, and he goes, well, call him. So I call him, the guy answers the phone, and I say, hi, I wanted to ask you a question. Yeah, shoot. And I just fall apart on the phone. And he's just waiting. And then I asked him if I could come to the office there with my team. I told him what had happened. And in that office on the other side of the city, there were about 400 licensed people that worked out of there, lots of hustle and bustle. I could plug my team into that environment while I was empty and they could get filled. So he said, let me check with my wife and I'll call you back. And he said, we would be overwhelmed to have you there. And so for the first year, it was overwhelming because I owed so much money. I was so much in debt. And I conjured up this elaborate business plan, and I went to this RM guy to say, hey, this is my plan. I want to get some feedback from you. And he looks at it and he crumples it up and he throws it in the waste paper basket. And he says, that's way too complicated. He gave me crap about making it complicated. And he says, just go do 1 in 15,000 points every single month and you'll turn your life around. Get out of my office. And so, yeah, that was pretty much my love sandwich, I guess. Get it together. So I continue to push myself through my fears harder than ever. And so here's the thing. I had lost who I was. I had lost my identity. I had lost everything. And so I locked myself in the room, in their conference room every day, Monday through Friday, from 12 till 2 p.m. before I had to pick up the kids. And I would make 25 calls a day. Now, sometimes I'd get no's, sometimes I'd get hang-ups, wrong numbers, whatever. It wasn't about the people on the other end of the phone. It was about my life and my mental toughness. Did I have that survival skill to continue on? Did I have what it would take to build another team, to have the juice to start over again, right? So this was like the summer of 2013 when he threw my game plan in the garbage, right? And so everything came to a head in one calendar week. Now imagine this is your life, right? So in one calendar week, I get called by a lawyer who says, you either settle out of court or we'll take you to court and take you for everything you have. So I settled out of court. I signed a judgment, which said that I had to make this is for the lease that I ran from, right? I had to make a $1,600 payment for the next 6 years. If I missed one payment or had one NSF, they would file the judgment and I would lose my license. I had CRA garnishing my commissions 30% because when I was trying to keep my office afloat, I didn't pay my tax bill. So I owed them $35,000. Compliance found an agent in my business who was at fault. She was no longer in the business, but her liability rolled up to me because I trained her. So head office was wanting to garnish my commissions 10%, and I begged the president and he reduced it down to 5%. So now I'm having 35% of my income gone right off the hopper. I had no more savings. I had $40,000 of personal credit card debt. I had 20% of my team left. And it took me $13,000 to run all my house expenses and my business expenses, $13,000 a month. My ego was hit in a big, big way. I work in finance and I'm a financial mess. This did not feel good. This is a serious identity crisis. I literally had all the stuff happen like a domino effect. I was so angry. Jenna, can you get the picture of the story off of my shelf? Sorry, I mentioned your name. Maybe they can edit that. I remembered I was driving in the car and I was heading from the south side of Edmonton to St. Albert. And I was so angry. And I remember just yelling and screaming and yelling at, thank you, yelling and screaming. And I was like a lunatic. I was yelling, how could these things be happening to me? I'm not a horrible person. I'm a good person. Why are these things happening? Like, have anybody ever been so mad that you've been yelling those things? You know, and you're like, what is happening? Like, I'm yelling in the car like some crazy person, and God needed to shut my mouth. I remember the very last thing that I said to him was, I just need to know that you are there. That is the last thing I yelled at him. And then I'm sitting in this turning lane to go to St. Albert on 137th Ave, and it's a gloomy, rainy day. And all of a sudden the clouds open up over the intersection. The sun comes down, hits the ground, and it bounces up into these two incredible rainbows. I go from a screaming lunatic to like, oh, wow. And I take my camera and I say, click the picture, the light changes, and I put the camera down. And I'm driving home. La 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 la, like from crazy person to wow, la la la. Anyway, my husband was very afraid for me to come home. We had had a big fight that morning. He knew about all the stuff that was, you know, hitting the fan, so to speak. Anyway, so when I pulled into the driveway and I get out of the car, again, a very supernatural feeling. I don't even know how I got home. Okay. You ever drive somewhere and you end up there and you don't even know how you got there? Okay. So this is the same kind of thing. So I go into the house and he's bracing himself, I'm sure. But then he sees my face and he immediately knows something happened from the look on my face. He goes, "What happened to you?" And I'm like, "Oh, you're not going to believe what happened. Let me show you this rainbow." And so I pull up my phone and I can't believe what I see. It is the face of God. I'm not kidding you. It is the Lion of Judah, the face of God. You can see it in this picture. You can see his forehead, his eyes, his nose, his mouth, the beardedness all around. Here's the lamppost. I'll pass it around. Anyway, so it was mind-blowing because my very last words, I just need to know that you're there. And that's what he shows me. So don't tell me he's not real. He is real because I seen him. So now I'm on a whole other journey because now I can't deny he's real. And he is in my face showing me the external. Yes, I might be running, but internally, he's showing me I made these choices. I got myself into this mess and I need to get out. I need to fix it myself. I got some financial advice from some of my colleagues, and they said, well, just declare corporate bankruptcy and start over with a clean slate, because I had literally $230,000 to pay off. And of course, I looked at myself in the mirror and I felt like it was extremely important that I take responsibility for what happened and that I pay it off. And I really feel, well, let me rephrase that. I felt at the time, but now I know it to be true, that God was teaching me how to properly steward what he has given me. So he gave me this business, which gave me the chance to get away from a bad relationship. He gave me the ability to help other people and to be a good leader. I wasn't always a good leader, but, to raise people up and give them some courage and give them some vision of what they could do for their family. He gave me that ability, the skills, the gifts, all the things that I have. And I couldn't dishonor him by ignoring what he was trying to teach me. Because for the however many years he was probably trying to teach me, but I wasn't paying attention. So I made a decision. No, I'm going to fix this problem. But through that process, I really lost who I was. I lost my passion. So even though all these things happened, the enemy stole so much from me. Stole my identity. He stole my passion. He stole my joy. I was so fearful about making the wrong decisions. I didn't make any. And I just flatlined for like 10 years, paying the debt, doing what I can. I always made sure I paid everything, but it was a lot of pressure. And instead of, I still poured into my team. I did what I could, but there was always this missing piece inside of me, like I was missing something that that I needed to kick into high gear. So again, a lesson is you can always externally, you can always do practical things to raise and regain confidence. But I think there comes a point where you have to decide if you're willing to put that kind of effort in. Because if you don't make that decision, you're just going to continue coasting for the rest of your life. So internally, God was reminding me that He has walked with me through all the messes. And He will continue to be with me in the seasons of these lessons and rebuilding who I was. And you look at it for real, like what job would ever allow me to pay off $230,000? Like in a job environment, you can't control what you make. And I need to make a lot of money to pay those bills. So for these 10 years, I'm stuck. I can't seem to break any barriers, from 2012 to 22, I just felt like I was in this stronghold and I set these goals and I wouldn't accomplish these goals. And, my marriage was on the rocks and, we were empty nesters looking at each other like, what do we do with you? What do you do with me? Like me, there was a lot of just flatness and I didn't know who I was again. And I felt like, where's that fire, that drive? Where's that girl I know? And I couldn't find her. So as I mentioned before, we took that sabbatical and, we would do these Bible apps together. And that's the only way we survived. And we made a promise to our pastor that him and his wife would come over halfway between this separation. Paul was at his brother's. I was staying at the house. This was a defining moment in my life, you guys. So the pastor came over for lunch and here I am thinking, I've got it together. I'm a leader. I've been doing self-development my whole career. He's the one with the problems. There's nothing wrong with me. That's what I was thinking. Well, that's not how it turned out. So anyway, so the pastor starts sharing that even though him and his wife have been married for 15 years up until this point, this was a while back, he's telling the story, but he's been pastoring for 15 years and their marriage was about to be on the rocks. Many times they had put their rings on the table saying, and then, they'd pick them up again and try again, right? So it was his discussion with God where he was told he has something called the orphan spirit. So then he looks over at me and he says, Karen, you have that spirit. And I'm like, what is that? And of course, when it comes to personal growth, I am kind of like a dog with a bone. So I'm like, what is the orphan spirit? He goes, go research it. I think you'll see yourself in there. So I did. I researched it. And I looked at all the things. And it's like people who have lost a parent, people who have been traumatized, people who have been rejected or abandoned. I'm like, check, 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 check. And then it talked about how the people with the orphan spirit develop control issues. Oh, check. And they control people and everything around them. Oh, check, check. And then, oh my gosh, I said, this is me. And as I'm reading on, then it talks about that these control issues, if you are unaware, will automatically turn into narcissism. And I think the only savings grace I had, because I think I would have probably already been there based on my behavior, was the fact that I had this environment, that it made me hold myself accountable to leadership, to development, that I didn't go that bad. So, and you again look at the pattern, the generational pattern. My father was a narcissist. My ex-husband was a narcissist, right? If I didn't change my ways, who do you think I would be raising? Generational curses are real. So externally, God would place people in my life, just like he places people in our lives to teach us. Sometimes we see it and sometimes we don't, right? Internally, pride and ego were still there. it was, this like almost hidden. You know what I mean? Like sometimes pride, you don't know you have pride. Like this is kind of I don't know if you call that an oxymoron, but my pride was preventing me from seeing my pride. Does that make sense? So even though I was in this leadership position and I knew what I was doing, so I thought, but the enemy is such a liar and can manipulate our thought patterns, just like I talk about those blueprints, those patterns. So this is my awakening in 2022. It's not that long ago. Okay. There's hope for everybody. Telling you. So this weekend changed my life. I was doing a morning Bible study. I was doing some journaling. I was restless. I was tired. I decided I need to be able to just take a break. I started watching this video on YouTube. It was on murder, right? It was a pastor's video. And I click it and he starts talking about murder. And I'm like, well, I don't want to watch it. And I hear this voice in my head, watch it. Okay. So I start watching it and all of a sudden I realize, oh, maybe I do need to watch this. So he's talking about the story of Cain and Abel in the Bible, but he goes and he talks about murder. He says, what precedes murder? Hate. What precedes hate? Anger. What precedes anger? It's resentment. And what precedes resentment is unforgiveness. And I'm like, wait a second. I said, I threw my book, not my Bible, my notebook. I said, are you telling me that I have unforgiveness? After all the stuff that I've been through, all the self-development, pride and ego, all the journaling, all the, leadership, the conferences, I've written this out. I can talk about it. I have no trauma. I can talk about the things that happened to me. Like, there's no way. There's no way, I said. So I'm like, that's enough of that. Shut that off. And then I start listening to this other guy that I was listening to. His name's Lance Wallno, and he was talking about this topic. He's like a Christian business guy that does acquisition or whatever. Yeah, coach. Yeah. Anyway, and so I'm listening to this podcast and I have my earpieces in and he's like, sometimes when you really need to hear the truth, you need to be quiet so that God can speak to you. You need to shut off the TV. You need to shut me off and you need to just be quiet. And I'm like, okay, fine. Shut it off. Decide I'm going to go out and get some fresh air and I'm digging in the dirt. Digging, digging, digging. I hear my name called. Dig, dig, dig in the dirt. My name's called again. Oh. So God says my name. Says, why do you have such a hard time trusting me? Every man in my life hurt my feelings or hurt my body or did something. I don't trust any man. And then he says, I have never hurt you. Why will you not allow me to be close to you? I didn't let people in because I got hurt. Then he says, you control so much around you so you don't get hurt. He's finishing my sentences as I'm thinking them. He says, I'm your real father, and I have been there all along through your troubles. He says, let me be your protector. Let me be your provider. Let me help you. I was so afraid to say yes. I was so afraid to let go. of the control, because that was my identity. That was my security blanket. But I was also so tired of the fighting. So I said yes. And then he tells me, you need to go and forgive those people who hurt you. I'm like, really? And he said, yes. I was mad because I thought I had done that. And then he said something to me. He said, I need you to realize that there is something deep within your DNA that you need to release. And I'm the only one who can do that for you. So he told me what to do. I went and wrote it out. I went and said forgiveness. I said a prayer of healing for those people. And I did that for every single person except for one. And it was my own husband. And he said, so he asked me why I didn't want to do it. And I said, because I'm not ready. And it's so weird, right? Because he's the person who's loved me the most, been kind to me the most, supported me the most. But there had been some trust things in our relationship that trust was a big thing for me, a big thing. Like people who broke my trust, it took a long time to earn that back. And I had to forgive him too. And I didn't want to. So I negotiated with God. Can you believe that? He asked me how much time you need. I said 3 days. He gave me 3 days. And you know what happened? That third day, it was supernatural too, but it was like a dream. But it wasn't a dream. I was sitting on the couch and it's like God showed me all the beautiful things about Paul. Because, we always look at the bad things in our spouses. We don't see the good things sometimes. And he showed me all the beautiful things about him and how he loves him this way. And it showed me the way I should be loving him, which I wasn't doing. And then when I had done all that, he told me to open up my Bible. And then he gave me Jeremiah 29:11. For I know the plans I have for you, to prosper you, not to harm you, the plans to give you a hope and a future. And so after I'd done all these exercises, I had a big pile of Kleenex on the couch about this deep, crying, writing, your eyeballs are like bug out of your head. I'm going to tell you what happened next. So again, it was another supernatural experience where I could actually see, have you ever seen like one of those like movie clips that go really fast, or like if like almost like what do you call those things before they make pictures, like a trailer, I guess, or whatever, same kind of thing. I called it a Rolodex because that was old school for me, like if you flip the Rolodex and all the business cards, right? So I literally got to see from God's perspective, giving me a download, all the things and all the ways that the enemy personally attacked me over my entire life. I got to see all of that in this brief moment. And it was the most empowering, mind-blowing thing that I saw, because once you see it, you cannot unsee it. Once you see it and you know his tactics and how he affects you, guess what? He holds no power. So I felt like I just went like, I don't know, I'm not a boxer. I was going to say like 12 rounds in the ring and he was KO'd and whatever. And I had the gloves on and I could, kick some butt and, all of that. Anyway, So after that, it was like I woke up in that moment and I was awake. The fog was gone. The fear was gone. I felt like I was armed with the greatest weapons ever, and that the enemy could no longer affect me. So externally, we see the things that we can't change in our perspective. That's what we see. We see we can't change this or we can't change that. And we see that things are set this way and we continue to live this pattern. But that is not true. After hearing my story, you need to know that is not true. You can change things, right? Internally, you have to be willing to fully surrender. Or maybe you don't like that word, but you have to fully decide to be all in and give in and actually do the work to develop yourself so that you can become the person you need to be. And I asked him for one thing. I said, if I do this work, this was like the whole forgiveness piece, right? If I do that, I want you to take the pain away. You can leave the lesson, you can leave me the memory, but just take the pain. And he took it. He took the pain. Last page. Woo! The audience says, last page. Woo! So my comeback. You know, our team name in the office is called the Phoenix, and that's the story of the bird that rises from the ashes, right? You can go look it up. So since that time, there's been growth, there's been financial blessings, there's been so much good that God has given me. You know, I've stepped into being more of a godly leader, treating people better, loving them, encouraging them, praising them, recognizing them, teaching them kingdom principles so they can advance themselves. The enemy tried to stop me by having this office, but God was behind me. And he gave us the vision and the decision that we could take over this office space ourselves. Don't get me wrong. There's always going to be scary moments, moments that push you. There's always going to be some kind of trial. But when you know you can overcome stuff, you don't let those things derail you or distract you, you know? And he'll come at you through other people, right? Like in this journey, I didn't talk about it, but my oldest son almost died, you know, and that was like a distraction for about 6 months because he was like borderline health issues and whatever. So there are people that, you know, are put in your path that are good people. But if you don't have discernment and you don't understand why those people are in your path, you could be choosing to be hanging out with the wrong people. I made those decisions here, had people come into my business that really shouldn't have been there. And, you know, God had to show me through some difficult situations that I needed to ask those people to leave, right? So you need to be in alignment with him. He'll protect you, he'll provide you, you know, along with the trials, along the difficulties, along the big decisions that need to be made. But there's this peace that I have that surpasses all understanding in decisions that I make and the joy that I have in the trials that I go through. And I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful for every single experience I've been through in my life. And I have tremendous gratitude, good or bad, because it made me who I am today. And I wanted this message to be a message of hope that inspires each and every one of you to always continue to fight and to never give up and to always push forward in your life. To develop a relationship with God, he will never fail you. I guarantee you that. He will build you into a king or a queen, the person you're meant to be. Never be afraid to open your heart, even if it's scary. And just remember that if you have God at your side, you can accomplish whatever you want. Yes.
Aaron, for those that are watching, what are we going to expect from upcoming podcast sessions? What are your topics you're going to go through?
Well, I have a number of topics. I actually did 9 podcasts before, and this is an example. When you're doing God's work, okay? So what I mean by that, when you're in alignment and you're following that path, you're accomplishing what he wants you to accomplish. Yes, he'll empower you, but the enemy will come at you. So I recorded these 9 podcasts when I was at my previous church. They don't know what happened to them. 9 podcasts that just disappeared. They couldn't find the recordings. The pastor's daughters were involved. One of the younger guys was doing the film editing. None of them could find these podcasts. So I already have 9 topics that we need to do. So some of them were on marriage, some of them were on, going through difficult circumstances, real life stuff. Some of them were, interviewing a panel of 20 somethings and having discussions about some of the peer pressure and the hard decisions that need to be made, and the influence of social media and the impact on that. There's just so many things, but I want our podcast to be real discussions, real life things that affect people, that people need to be able to either have a breakthrough on or be able to move through so they could make better choices in their life. And I want to be able to interview people. Other people have great stories, like my friend back there. When she's ready, she is going to share a story that will blow people's minds. And I know for a fact her story will change lives like crazy. And so, yeah, anybody who wants to be interviewed, come and see me. We'll do a podcast. Thank you so much for your time, everybody. I really appreciate it. I appreciate talking to an audience, not a camera. Thank you, everybody on the camera land.